Good afternoon and good evening to everyone out there in viewerland. I am Craig DeLuz, and this is The Rundown, the Taco Tuesday edition of The Rundown. As we all know, though, I do not do this program by myself.
No, that's right. I tend to help out when I'm available. My name is Mike Borski. I am the host from the East Coast, the co-host from the East Coast, and I'm here to spend my afternoon with you guys.
Dude, I have to tell you. So, Taco Tuesday, I finally decided, I've been saying I want to do this for a few weeks. I made pulled pork street tacos.
Ooh.
That's what I had for lunch today. Fresh out of I had the pork roast. I put it in the crock pot for about 4 hours, pulled it right off, piping hot, just shredded the pork off of there, man. Oh, had homemade salsa, sriracha, sour. Oh my God. I just will tell you right now, I am utterly shocked that I am not in a food coma at this moment.
That's some good stuff. That's some good stuff right there. So usually when I make them, it's the meats like you do, and I'll do the chicken, beef, the pork, all of it. But then I'm a strict kind of, a cilantro chopped onion guy, diced onion guy. That's maybe a little bit of special sauce, a little bit of the little green, little red, But it sounds like you went all out, and that sounds really good.
Well, yeah, I just felt like I was like, okay, I need to add a little bit of, but you're right. A little bit of squeeze of the lime and the cilantro is usually, maybe a little hot sauce is all you usually really need. Yeah. But I felt like it was an extra special Taco Tuesday, so I did it.
You kicked it up a notch. Yeah.
Bam!
Just like that. Yeah.
Bam! Like I said, I don't often cook, but when I do, there's two things that will happen. Number one is I go all out, and number two, I dirty a lot of dishes.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, that's what the kids are for, right? Clean these dishes if you want to eat.
Yeah, my kids all of a sudden. So it's funny. They growing up, they did the dishes, right? Then one went off to college, one went off to work on a cruise ship, and then they came back and they miraculously forgot how to do dishes. Then my son gets married, my daughter gets married, and then all of a sudden they know how to do dishes again, just not our dishes.
It's not your dishes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's funny. The other day, the wife was yelling at the daughter about the dishwasher and get it emptied, and she was probably yelling a little bit more than she should have. And my 16-year-old just stopped in her tracks and said, "Mommy, just remember, I'm going to be the one that decides where you live when you get older."
That is actually something that my daughter would say. My son would think it, but he's like, "Why warn them? They should know."
Yep. There you go.
Anyway, that be how our kids are. I always look at it this way. I'd rather my kids be smart asses than dumb asses.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, that is a.
Forgive the French, but it has a little more oomph to it when you say it right.
Yep.
All right, Mikey. Let's start off the news today talking about the Rittenhouse trial. Now, I know it's a big thing for a lot of folks. If you have not been watching this, all you really needed to watch, and tell me I'm wrong, Mike, all you really needed to watch was the closing arguments, and you pretty much got the gist of the case. Would I be wrong?
Yeah, that's. I mean, you could go if you had just to watch only portions of it. That would be it. But mind you, that was about 4.5, 5 hours just to watch the closing arguments. So that's true. Let's preface this by saying, Craig, I know it's East Coast here. I just finished work, sitting down with you. So if something has popped up in the last 2-3 hours, if they've decided this, I haven't looked. I haven't looked yet. All right. I was literally trying to rush home on time today to get to be with you. So what we have is to cover right now is the closing arguments from yesterday and this morning. They went into closing arguments a little bit more this morning, and they did some more of the jury instructions. So there's that. Now there was a couple of things that come out, and I'm trying to scroll through my notes here to find this.
Mike, let me do this real quick. I just want to kind of show you real quick. The New York Times put together a quick video summarizing the arguments of the prosecution. Do you mind if I share that real quick?
Let's do it.
Okay, and it'll be on here with us, so we can kind of take a look at it together. Here we go.
I think it's no surprise that this is a case that there's a lot of noise and a lot of static surrounding it. So what I'd like to do at the beginning is crystallize it in a nutshell for you and keep it as simple as possible. This is a case in which a 17-year-old teenager killed 2 unarmed men and severely wounded a third person with an AR-15 that did not belong to him. He saw at that moment that there was nothing in the defendant's hand, or in Mr. Rosenbaum's hands. He was unarmed. And one of the things to keep in mind is that when the defendant provokes the incident, he loses the right to self-defense. You cannot claim self-defense against a danger you create. That's critical right here. The defendant decided to pull the trigger on his AR-15 4 times. That was his decision. And he is responsible for every bullet that comes out of that gun. He doesn't get a pass by pulling the trigger fast. He could have chosen to stop after the first shot, after the second shot, after the third shot, and assessed whether or not there was still a need to keep firing. But he went 4 times in 0.76 seconds.
All right, so Mike, just to kind of throw this out there. So first of all, their whole argument is that he was the aggressor, and that simply by showing up with a gun, that in and of itself made him the aggressor, and therefore he is not allowed to claim self-defense. Am I pretty much summing up their entire case?
Yeah, and he said, in fact, I think his quote was, "You don't bring a gun to a fist fight." Well, Greg, you know what? You don't bring a gun to a fist fight. You bring a gun to end a fist fight. Okay, just the mere presence of the firearm. That's it. Just the mere presence of the firearm says, "I'm not putting up with your nonsense." All right, don't come.
No. Let's be clear, Mike. The presence of a gun. People know there's a gun there. The clear presence of a gun is notice that this is a gunfight. And rule number 1 is don't bring fists to a gunfight.
Right. We've had this talk before. If you get in a fist fight and there's a fist fight going on, you don't pull your gun during a fist fight. All right.
Right.
Fist fight. If you entered into a fist fight, you stay with the fist fight rules. All right.
Right.
This was not a fist fight rules. This was guns going on. This was a gunfight that somebody brought a skateboard to. This was a gunfight that somebody decided to grab the barrel of the gun. This was a gunfight that somebody decided to point a gun at my head. Okay.
Right.
That's what this was.
If you know there is a gun,
yes,
then it is a gunfight. It is not a fist fight.
Correct. The other thing that was interesting was when he grabbed this, the state's attorney there, you found a prosecutor that we just looked at, grabbed Kyle's rifle, grabbed Rittenhouse's rifle, picked it up, put his finger on the trigger, and aimed it around the room at the jury and other people in the room. And he says before he picks it up, by the way, "Oh, somebody else cleared it for me. Let me show you this." And he puts his finger on the trigger. So clearly, this prosecutor went to the Alec Baldwin School of clearing a firearm.
What else do you notice about this? What do you notice about the chamber?
I notice that the bolt is forward, right? That the dust cover's open, which means somebody has cleared it, right, or opened it and at least cocked it very recently.
Yes.
Okay, so that tells me that. It also tells me it looks like somebody took Kyle's sights off his rifle.
Exactly. But it tells you don't know if it's been cleared or not because you can't see. It's not open. Yes. You can't even look in there and see if it's cleared.
Correct. Right there, it's more of a warning to me because it means at this point somebody has cycled that bolt. That's what it's telling me.
Right. But this is a guy who wants to teach you about firearms. Like now, the other prosecutor was funny because he was like, "Who's going to go in shooting like this?" Right? He was doing an example of this. I'm like, well, clearly, the dude who had the gun clearly wasn't experienced. So that guy evidently
lefty Grosskirts.
I just meant it was beyond. There is no way anyone could have watched this trial,
right,
and not gotten the fact that not only did the defense make a solid case, but the prosecution made a solid case for the defense.
Yes, yeah. They. I'm not sure how this one comes back with anything but Kyle goes home, because the only thing that they had a possibility of trying to stick was the gun charge, and the judge threw it out because the prosecution was applying it in the wrong manner.
Well, now rumor has it that the prosecution was going to ask that the charge of jaywalking be included, just so that they have a shot at getting a conviction on something.
Try and get a charge to stick, right? Yeah.
So just so they can try and get a charge to stick.
Unfortunately, the prosecution did not ask the question, so they cannot use that.
Right.
You still have to prove the jaywalking by talking about the elements, and that's what they're failing to do here.
What I utterly cannot believe is, and then this is even worse than the trial itself, is the media's coverage. Like the way in which they said that Kyle Rittenhouse testified that he murdered 2 people, when no, that's not what he said. CBS News literally in their news reporting said that Kyle Rittenhouse in his in his murder trial testified to murdering 2 people. Now, first of all, he admitted to shooting 2 people in self-defense. He did not admit or account how he didn't talk about murdering anyone.
Correct.
If you followed the mainstream media, you would have absolutely no idea what court case they are reporting on. And the problem with it is that they're the ones that are fomenting. They're going to be if there is a riot, if there are riots, they are going to be partially culpable in the lies, the out and outright lies that they have continued to tell when it comes to the reporting of this story.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. This is what we have. Listen, I mean, the CNN and MSNBC yesterday, I think they played the prosecution's portion of the closing arguments, and then not the defendant's portion.
Interesting. I couldn't find a New York Times video on the defendants. Now I could be wrong. Maybe it's out there, but I couldn't find where they did it, or where they summed up the defense's closing arguments. Well, because they're not arguing on behalf of the defense in this case. They're arguing on behalf of the prosecution. Now, the last thing that really gets me, and this is what I completely don't understand. So, a white guy shoots 3 other white guys, killing 2 of those white guys.
Yes.
And so a white guy is on trial for killing 2 white guys, and yet somehow this case is about race?
Well, because we had the white officer shoot, it was a Jacob Brown, Jacob Black. I forget his last name. Who was trying to kidnap the child with the knife during the domestic violence with the warrant active, and they shot him allegedly in the back, and that's what started the riots. And
that's right. Again, that's right. The guy who went after the knife so that he could stab the officers.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. You're correct.
Well, ultimately,
so that's why we have white people having protests against other white people.
Came out. The 3 convicted felons came out to protest on behalf of the guy who wanted to stab cops who got shot. Got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we were able to clear. I'm glad we were able to clear that up and how related to race it is. Works. Yeah. Well, the other argument that I saw was, if this was a black teen, he wouldn't be given the presumption of innocence. It's like, first of all, number one, he would. But if this were a black teen who shot 2 other black males or 3 other black males who attacked him, it would barely make the evening news.
Right.
It wouldn't be a national. The trial itself would not be a national story.
It would be a Chicago story, and nobody would care. Right.
Right. Exactly. Pretty much. That would be about it. But anyway,
Jacob Blake, that was his name. Jacob.
We will. I am anticipating we'll have we will have if it has not been announced while we're on the air right now, we will soon have a verdict. I don't see this taking very long. The one charge where there was a question mark has already been thrown out, so I don't foresee this taking very long for us to get a verdict. So. And it's going to be an innocent verdict, and the left, because they get to riot when they don't get their way.
Exactly right. Or when their sports teams win.
Exactly. that is how. That's
again another Chicago reference. I'm sorry, it's another Chicago reference.
Right. So all right. So now we got a story, and this one is actually kind of an interesting one. CNN is being criticized roundly by a number of folks, in particular in ethnic media or black media, for a piece that they did talking about the dysfunction in the Kamala Harris administration, in her office, right? In the
Right.
folks that she deals with and does business with there in her office, which, by the way, just so you know, she's from California. This is nothing new. Dysfunction in those who work around her is not a new thing. It's pretty much standard operating procedure for Kamala Harris's offices. But they're also talking about how the dysfunction between her office and the Biden administration, Biden's office. And a lot of this stuff is all coming from within the White House. So it's coming from the administration. But here's the interesting thing, Mike, is once again, it's like the Democrats are now infighting. And I'm guessing, this is just my speculation. My speculation is they know that Biden isn't going to run. And so liberals are attacking Kamala Harris because as the vice president, she's the front runner, or at least starts off as the front runner. But they see now she is weak based on her poll numbers. And so they're trying to make sure that she is not going to be the leading candidate when campaign starts a little more than a year from now.
Yeah, listen, I think they may try to get her off the ticket before then, or out of office before then. I think that she is dangerous to them. I think that they know that Biden is not going to go the entire 4 years, and that their plan to have her take over afterwards and extend her presidency is now the demise or the future demise of the Democrat Party. They know she's polling so low that they've got to get her out of there. They're continuing to distance themselves from her, let her do stupid things, and then provide no top cover. So I think, Craig, a half a step beyond you there. That yes, they're distancing themselves from her for sure, but I think they're trying to figure out a way to have her not be the vice president anymore.
Okay, but how do you do that, Mike? Because how does she not the vice president? Because unless you replace her, I mean, she has to do something. Once again, high crimes and misdemeanors to be replaced as the vice president.
Scandal,
so that's number
right?
one. So you got to find it, and then you have to get enough people to convict her of it. And unless things dramatically change in the House and the Senate, I don't see 2/3 vote in the Senate.
Which is what's predicted, right? But
I don't see 2/3, which is what it's going to take.
Well, not in the House. You'll only need the majority in the House.
Well, right, but that's not removing her from being vice president. It still has to pass the Senate. In other words, 2/3 of the Senate has to vote to remove her from office.
Right, or the House can impeach her. And
if she gets impeached, she's still vice president.
Yeah, so I'm saying this will create the controversy around her. She doesn't get removed, which will keep her from being the front runner for the next term.
Okay. So I thought you were saying they're going to actually just move her out. I don't see them doing that, especially if Republicans are running both houses of Congress.
But this gets her out of the way. And also, listen, it's also going to take visibility off of Biden, right? If he continues to go downhill, maybe they can keep him on there for an extra 2 years. They put the focus on her.
They're going to throw the sister under the bus. That's why they made her vice president. So
I mean, she's not far from scandals. Okay, no. Every job she's ever had, there's been scandal. Right. All they got to do is bring that back around. Look, here's the video, and you and Willie. All right, you and Willie doing the nasty. There we go. All right,
right. All right. Well, let's move right along. All right, this next one you brought to the table, so I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce this one.
So if you remember, was it 3 weeks ago now that Coach Gruden, John Gruden, he stepped down. He resigned from the NFL and from a head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders over some
the Raiders.
This is their quote. Their quote is, "It's over a homophobic, misogynistic, and I guess it was anti-gay or gay jokes, something along those lines." Now, the time frame for those was something like 10, 12 years ago when Gruden was not in the NFL. He was not a paid advisor. He was doing broadcasting back then. He had been a coach previous to that. We know that. And he'd gone off to, raise the family and now that's done. And he came back to doing some coaching. But so you have his emails that were between him and friends that the NFL found when they were searching the other NFL employees' email addresses, and they released them. And listen, Craig, I saw them. You saw them. This looked like joking amongst friends. Does that mean I can make an LGBT joke amongst my friends and say it's a mean-spirited joke and that make it right? No, it doesn't make it right. But when it's between friends, I don't see where I need to have an apology to somebody else out there that saw the email 12 years later that I said 12 years ago that was acceptable and it was personal. It was between two buddies, with no hate, no harm, no foul. Nobody meant to hate on anybody. And so that's what Gruden is saying. He's saying, listen, you went into my personal documents. You had no right to release them, no right to do anything. You forced me to resign rather than, ruin my team and ruin my ownership with the team and ruin the family. So he resigned, and now he's seeking compensation for their pressure that they put on him for resigning and for their releasing illegally his statement, releasing his personal email traffic.
Well, yeah, exactly. In this particular case, this was clearly vendetta from the commissioner.
Yes.
Roger Goodell didn't like the things that John Gruden said about him, either as a commentator or the things that he said about him as a, in his private emails. And so he figured he's going to get back at him. And this was specifically designed to do that. At a certain point, and I think we've talked about this, man, look, you have to be able to have private conversations. And the things that you say may not necessarily be flattering. I think many of the things that he said and he's accused of are overblown. But I'm also like this. I'm also a believer in when it comes to electronic emails. If you don't want it on the front page of the New York Times or the LA Times, you don't send any electronic communications. Don't send it because it lives forever.
Sure, and that's what happened, right? But think about it. He sent this 12 years ago, a personal email account to a friend that had an NFL account, and many of them were forwarded. So he sent to another friend, and then it got forwarded somewhere else because somebody doesn't understand how the reply all button works. But how do you do that? How do you take from this guy's? You solicited a question from him. He gave you a response, and now you're going to hold it against him as it came from his private server. So,
well, by the way, when he didn't even work for you.
That's right.
That's what's so funny is that he's been they demand that he resign over something that was not public, that he didn't say, that quite frankly happened before he ever worked for you.
Yep.
It is what it is, dude.
Right.
I hope he
tuned.
wins. Yeah. And I sincerely hope that they tie it directly to Roger Goodell and make him come out of pocket big time for it.
Oh, well, you know how it is. They'll tie it directly to Roger Goodell, and then every team will have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the NFL that'll be paying for it, not Roger Goodell.
God,
so
I don't like that guy. I just don't.
Yeah.
Roger Goodell.
No, I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
Now there's a story coming out of New York City.
New York City.
Get a rope. There's basically a former prosecutor there in New York who's in essence saying that if New York's carry law were to get overturned, it would basically turn New York into the wild, wild west. Now, I can just weigh it just on that comment alone. Mike, is it just me, or is New York City already pretty much the wild, wild west? Or worse than the wild, wild west?
It is not. It's nowhere near Chicago. Let's say that.
Okay.
Let's be clear there. But the gun violence has been running rampant for the past year and a half, 2 years since the lockdown. De Blasio might as well have just handed out the firearms and invited people into the city with his laws and his enforcement tactics, with his method of tyranny on the freedom-loving peoples of New York City. But Craig, this is what we see all the time. Every time a gun law passes, every time a gun law is repealed, this is what we get from the left. Oh, it's going to be wild, wild west. It's going to be blood in the streets. Craig, when first time we had concealed weapons permits, the first in the modern era here at 86 in Florida, that was the cry. It's going to be the wild, wild west. We just heard about it most recently, Craig, in Texas, as they went to constitutional carry. Remember what's going to happen? Oh my God, it's going to be the wild, wild west. It's the worst cry ever. It's the worst cry ever. When this went to the state Supreme Court, with the New York State and Rifle Pistol Association case, 2 weeks ago, the cry there was, well, if a citizen's allowed to have a gun on a subway, then it means more citizens are going to have allowed to have guns on subways, and there'll be nothing but guns on subways. What you'll have is people legally armed, legally responsible people with firearms, and nobody's going to be pulling them out doing the wild, wild west. Because guess what? It's never ever happened. Not even in the wild, wild west did it even happen. Have you seen Tombstone? Remember what happened back then? They tried to take the guns away. People shot each other. Everybody was allowed to carry their firearm. Peaceful society.
Funny how that happens, huh?
Yep.
Because people realize that any confrontation has a the outcome is potentially worse. So it's kind of like mutually assured destruction, right? People are like, right. I'm not going to get in this fight because I don't want to get shot.
An armed society is a polite society.
Yes, it is. I just think the thing that he fails to recognize is that this law that he so hails, all it really does is disarm law-abiding citizens. That's individuals right. Who want to protect themselves from those who would seek to do harm against them. They're the only ones that are prevented from being able to possess a firearm or be able to defend themselves. And it ain't rocket science. I'm not talking about anything that just doesn't make sense. Here in Sacramento County, when our sheriff first took office back in, I think it was 2008, there were about 250 concealed carry permits in all of Sacramento County. Since then, we're somewhere up around now about 10,000 permits in Sacramento County. And as a result, violent crime has not gone up in Sacramento County. Well, let me clarify. Since the pandemic, violent crime everywhere has gone up. But it has not gone up more in Sacramento County than it has anywhere else. Since they started decriminalizing crime, it's gone up. But they've also seen the number of applications that people are putting in have gone up as well. Because once again, people want to be able to protect themselves against those who don't care whether or not you have a permit, whether or not you can legally carry or not. Because the law doesn't mean that much to them. They're going to carry no matter what. The
we use Chicago as one of our examples of Wild Wild West, and there's still shooting after shooting after shooting there. We know that. What has changed, because Chicago now, remember, for the past 3 years or so, has been able to get concealed weapons permits. So those people in the city, what has changed is the makeup of the victim in Chicago. Prior to that 3 years ago, it was not the majority, but there was a large population of the innocents, of the right. innocent people, the shop owners, the residents that were the victims of the violent crime. Now, and there have been a few shootings, right. that the citizens and the business owners are allowed to have firearms. The victims have that pool of victims that is the store owners and the private citizens has shrunk to almost nothing. The crime still happens, but now it's felon on felon, gang member on gang member. They're right. leaving the innocents alone because guess what? Innocents might have a gun. They ain't playing games.
Right. And I'd be interested to see if there is an increase. I'd be interested to see how many of those people that we know that the gun violence researchers who are anti-gun, the anti-gun violence researchers, be curious to know how many of those shootings are actually the criminals who were shot by law-abiding citizens with firearms.
Yeah, and we remember we had a couple of those after this started, and that's what started the trend of right. shifting of the makeup of the victims. So.
Yep. Exactly. Okay, moving right along. As we are approaching the end of our show, we're going to move on to, talk about the Wild Wild West here in Northern California. Now, this high school, I'm actually quite proud of these youngsters. Paso Robles High School is literally, it's probably about a 15-minute drive from here. It's right here in Northern California in Sacramento County. And there was a Veterans Day event, and I'm part of me is kind of happy and proud, and part of me is kind of, I wish they hadn't done that. But at the event, the Sacramento Bee is reporting that students showed up to a Veterans Day event, and they were outside protesting, and they had Trump 2020 flags. They had a Gadsden flag, which, by the way, was interesting because the way the article described it, they said, they described the flag, right? They described the yellow flag with the snake on it and said, "Don't tread on me." It's like, you idiot reporter, it's called the Gadsden flag. How about you actually just call it that? And people should know what you're talking about, but they're dumb enough. Anyway, but someone also had an F Joe Biden sign.
Listen, the only thing that I was hoping, Craig, is that when you said the high school, I was hoping it was Brandon High School.
That would have been phenomenal if it was at Brandon High School.
That would have been perfect. So
that would have been great.
So the high school students are getting in on the Let's Go Brandon, the F Joe Biden.
Except they're not saying Let's Go Brandon, or at least they didn't say Let's Go Brandon.
Well, I said F. You know, it's the.
What's
F
funny is they refer to the flag as a vulgarity laden flag, and it's literally there was one curse word.
Yeah, that's laden. The word Biden's not a very good word.
Vulgarity. I mean, I just find it funny that they point to. You have people on the left who point to "Let's Go Brandon" and call it vulgar, and it's like, no, it's not vulgar. It's an insult, no doubt.
Yeah,
and it represents a statement that includes a curse word, but it's also a curse word that y'all on the left used regularly. You used from stage, you used in media, you used it right and left about the former president, and you had no problem with it. So, you know, I don't get it. I don't get why is it that you're allowed to use it, but we're not even allowed to use a euphemism of it.
I don't even know if this counts as a euphemism. It's a completely different word, right? We're not saying, fornicate Joe Biden or frack Joe Biden. We're saying let's go Brandon. It's just
let's go Brandon.
A completely different phrase, yeah.
Exactly. So it's not vulgar just because of what you know what they intend. It's first of all, you have to be psychic, because what if you have a child named Brandon and you're just simply rooting for him at school?
Not working here. I was trying to see if I could get it to work here. It wasn't working.
Oh, okay. All right. Now let's get into today's parting shot. And this one was interesting because this goes back to our second story about, the vice president and how little is thought of the vice president. So Mike, you want to lay this one out? You're the one who introduced me to this one. So go ahead and lay this one out.
She's the vice president is there with the president. They're coming out onto the White House lawn there, and they're going to make some announcements. And what you miss is the long 50-yard walk as the three people are coming out with vice president squarely in the center and the president on the side, and this other woman there. And you could see who's heading for the podium. And this is the last couple seconds of it. Then listen to the announcer.
All right, here we go.
Please welcome Heather Kurtenbach.
In a moment. Please have a seat. President.
Okay. I'm going to guess that dude was not really paying attention and was reading and didn't bother to look and see who was actually at the podium.
How do you not see? How do you not see that? How are you sitting there and going, okay, I got to be ready just in case it's Joe Biden, just in case it's Kamala Harris, or just in case it's Heather there. And by the way, when would the vice president or the president ever come out and not be the first ones introduced?
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, the president of the United States, vice president of the United States, and what's her face?
And, exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. And I don't get it. People are like, "Oh, she handled it so well." No, she didn't. She got thrown under the bus.
Yeah, she was hot afterwards.
Oh boy,
because she's all about herself. She's all about ego. She was hot afterwards.
Oh yeah, I bet you the announcer and Heather both have broken legs right now.
Oh yeah, well that's her nervous laugh, right?
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah, you know that laugh. That laugh is like somebody's about to get it.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have her Secret Service detail handle it.
That's what she said. She said maybe in a moment, and she meant in a moment. I'm breaking that leg. Yeah,
all right, Mike. Hey, shout out to the sponsors before we run.
Guerrilla Machining, our good friends Guerrilla Machining, a Grid Defense, and of course the California Republican Assembly. Welcome and thank you for being our partners here on the Rundown.
We very much appreciate you. We appreciate your support. Folks, do us a favor. They help us do this. So help us help them. So follow their links in the description of this video. Go check them out. If it seems like something that you're interested in, which, by the way, you should be, purchase from them, join them, become a part of supporting the happy conservative 2A family.
That's right. Remember, they help us, help you, help them. So help all of us.
There you go. All right. Hey, tomorrow, hump day. We'll see you then.
Hump day. It's going to be a great day. We'll see you here.